Initially composed of a few volunteers who enlisted to defend the borders of the kingdom for free, in the last years of the empire it was mammoth and with exorbitant costs. Gargantuan, multicultural, very expensive. This had become the Roman army in the last years of the empire. Nothing to do with the first army, founded according to legend by the first king of Rome, Romulus, recruiting volunteers from the 3 tribes that formed the basis of the kingdom. Since the years of the monarchy, the basic unit of the army was the legion. The first was made up of 3,000 infantry and 300 equites chosen from the Roman population aged between 17 and 46 years. The soldiers were unpaid and they also had to pay for the armament themselves. The poorest were infantrymen and the richest were equites. The first salaries for soldiers appeared around the 5th century BC, but initially they were rather scarce. Often the soldiers enriched themselves with the spoils of war and with the gifts that the generals occasionally offered to the troops. Around the 2nd century BC, in the legions, the centurions who formed the middle cadres of the military hierarchy became more and more important. Each centurion commanded the centuria, made up first of 100 infantrymen up to 350 BC and later 60 to 80 infantrymen. With the birth of the Republic, the army was divided into 2 legions, each commanded by a consul and made up of a maximum of 10,000 legionaries and about 600 equites. When Hannibal crossed the Alps in 218 BC, to descend towards Rome, the Roman army had already grown and counted as many as 23 legions that garrisoned Italy, Illyria, Sardinia, Sicily, and Cisalpine Gaul. Over 150 later, when Caesar was killed in 44 BC, the legions from 23 had become 37, and after the civil war between the reign of Caesar and Octavian increased further. Some of these were established in Macedonia, in the east, and others in Africa. However, their management was not without problems. Also for this reason, Augustus tried to reform them, creating a professional army made up of 28 legions and later reduced to 25, made up of a total of 280,000 men who remained in service for no less than 16 years. To the professionals were added the simple legionaries. Overall, the imperial army in the years of Augustus ended up including about 250,000 soldiers who controlled an immense territory, which went from the Atlantic to the Euphrates and from Holland to Egypt. Augustus reformed the army and guaranteed the legionaries a regular wage and a discharge, an award or honest missio, usually a plot of land. When we talk about the army, we are not just referring to the legionaries. In fact, they were joined by auxiliary troops, or support troops, recruited in the occupied territories, the Praetorian ones, to guard the emperor and influential personalities and the military fleet. In the very first years of the empire, the army was mostly composed of italics. Already in the years of Nero, the army began to become multicultural, and under Trajan, the ratio between italics and foreigners became 1:4. Most of the soldiers were in fact enlisted in the provinces into which the legions were stationed. Over time, the growth of the armed forces did not stop. With Septimius Severus, the army numbered 442,000 units, while in the 3rd century the war machine reached about 500,000 soldiers, of which 200,000 were legionaries. In those years, military spending absorbed about 75% of the state budget. Social spending was almost non-existent, while the rest was spent on construction in Rome and in the provinces. The peak of the army was reached under the reign of Constantine when the soldiers were about 645,000 soldiers. If you like this video, please hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications because it helps a lot. Thank you and see you in the next video.